The reality of it is the baseline of the human experience is one in which dissatisfaction is always there. Human beings live a dissatisfying experience. What does that mean? It means that no matter what human beings get, that's why in Buddhism they call the unenlightened or the uninitiated human being a hungry ghost. Because no matter what you get, the problem is that no matter what you get, it will provide a temporary sense of relief. It will provide a temporary sense of pleasure or satisfaction, right? Just like eating food will. But you're going to be hungry again. And what you get that you want, you won't want it anymore, right? And because you see you have it, you don't want it because you have it, right? No matter what it is that you thought you wanted, the having of it will provide something for you, You look at the commercials for new cars, right? The cars are the second most expensive thing that people buy, right? Not only are they the second most expensive thing that people buy, but they are a very obvious way to have an identity that the car gives you, right? If you're driving a Rolls Royce, it's not the same thing as if you're driving a Chevy, right? So a car can give you an identity, that's why people are particular about the color, the model, and all that. And there's a lot of competition out there to sell these cars. And how do they sell them? One way they sell them is they say, if you have this car, people will notice you because you're obviously well-to-do, right? That's the BMWs, that's the Audis, that's the, all that stuff. And then super rich, the Rolls Royce, of course. Or whatever, Lamborghini or whatever that stuff is, right? So, you can have something, you can have an experience, you can have a status in the world by having this possession. And then they sell it different ways. The status way, the other way they sell it is the image that someone wants to have to be sexy, to be attractive to the other sex, right? So they're the red cars, the sports cars, the Corvettes, or the type of car that would indicate you're kind of intellectual, maybe a student or something, like a Volkswagen or, what's that Italian car?
Ferrari?
No, that's too rich for this.
Fiat.
Cooper.
Oh, Mini Cooper.
Mini Cooper, that's perfect for an intellectual type person, has a Mini Cooper, right? So it's an example of how the commercialization of these products is directed at where you're at, whatever it is that you want to have that you don't have. If you live in the ghetto but you drive a Cadillac, maybe you don't live in the ghetto anymore, unless, nobody finds out where you live, you drive a Cadillac, right? So this is one of the ways that the personality uses props, right? Props and disguises and outfits and plays games, acts certain ways, gets tattoos if you want to fit a certain group, talks a certain way, rides a motorcycle, right? These are all the ways that the personality is trying to somehow make it, get the attention, fit somewhere, you know what I mean? Find people like you, right? So the tribal thing, all of it, right? But the reality of it is none of that's going to get the job done. None of that's really going to offer the truth because there's a fundamental dissatisfaction that can't be satisfied. And that fundamental dissatisfaction is a dissatisfaction with the experience you're having of yourself, isn't it?
Yes.
That fundamental dissatisfaction is a dissatisfaction with the experience you're having of yourself. It's a dissatisfaction with the experience you're having of life. And no matter how little visit you get to pleasure, no matter how many things you buy that gives you that temporary shot of pleasure, right? As soon as you get what you want, you don't want it. Now, what makes you so naive to think because you got what you want that you thought would make the difference and now you don't want it and it didn't make the difference? What makes you think that's going to be the end of that, right? You know how this goes. The very next thing you do, when you buy a new car, right? The first day you buy a new car, it's like you were reborn. Right? Everything's beautiful. It smells good. Everybody's looking at my new car. You drive the car. Everybody's paying attention, right? Yeah, but then after 6 months or a year goes by, nobody's paying attention anymore. You've had to pay for maintenance of the car. The car's got scratches now. It really is just a car now. It doesn't get that for you anymore. At least for most of us, unless you really dumped a ton of money in the car and you go to car shows. There's ways to try and beat every game. But that's the way it goes for most people. And then you're driving your car and you notice car pulls up alongside of you, and that's the new version. And it's a little different. It's a little different enough that you could tell it's the newer version of your car, and it's got a bigger motor, right? It's got a bigger motor, and now it has the LED lights in the headlights, so people can tell that's a newer car, right? That's a cooler car than the ones without the LED headlights, right? So the car that you bought that now made you happy is like, I don't want this anymore. I want that. Right? This is true about cars. It's true about wives. Isn't it? It's true about jobs. It's true about houses. It's true about where you live, right? So life for a person is a constant process of trying to, it's kind of like those games. What are those cube games where you have to move the colors around? Yeah, it's like your life is that. You have to keep trying to change it to get it to work, to get it to work, to get it to work. And no matter how many times you change it, it still doesn't work. So the reality of it is that it's not a question of what you want that is really the truth. No, it's a question of the possibility of experiencing that you're satisfied. Because if you're satisfied, you don't want anything. The nature of awareness, if you give it some attention, if you look at awareness, which would be awareness looking at itself, it is possible to notice that the nature of your true nature is that it is just here, period. You can say nothing more about it other than you don't know what it is. It's here and you don't know what it is. But you can say it doesn't want anything. It doesn't seem to be trying to get anywhere. It doesn't want anything. It's just here. It's satisfied, it's complete, it's fulfilled. And if you want to go the whole route and talk about it in a non-dual way, you could say, well, the reason that is because it's everything. How could it not be fulfilled? Consciousness is everything. How could it not be fulfilled? There's nothing but consciousness. How could it not be fulfilled? So this can be understood at different levels, and the reality of it is that it is not only a teaching, not only a possibility, not only a practice, but it actually works. It actually works. You can actually stay satisfied. You can actually be satisfied and stay satisfied. And as a matter of fact, the reality of what you are is satisfied always. Right? So again, I want to be clear with you that I'm not talking about an accomplishment. I'm not talking about something if you work hard enough and you meditate hard enough and you read hard enough and you do the right things that you can get to this place of satisfaction. The most important thing that can be said about it is that it's already the case. You are already there. Who you are is satisfied. Who you are is satisfied. One of the things that I'm getting out of listening to Angelo is that he's speaking from a different angle about all this, right? He's speaking from the angle that this idea of your waking up, this idea of your being what you are, right, is actually very available. How could it not be very available when it's here now, always? How could it not be very available when it's here now, always? And so from a teaching perspective, let's emphasize that, right? Because the way the mind works, upon hearing about this, right, the first thing it does is it say, well, I'm not experiencing that. That's not true for me. So I'm here to find out how to get it. I'm here to find out what to do to get it, right? Because I'm not experiencing that, right? When in reality, see, that's the way the mind works, and then you become a seeker, right? When in reality, the idea of seeking is just a symptom. It's just a symptom. How could you seek for something that you already are, right? So if you have good support, and if you take the high road, right, so to speak, right? What do I mean by that? Take the high road. Start from the end. Start from the end. Start from even if it's not something that's real for you, see if you can buy into, because it resonates with you, or it makes sense, or you can see the possibility, or you recognize that it is real, you see it in other people. If you can get involved with it at that level, it doesn't have to be an experience that you're having all the time right now, but if you can get involved with it at that level, with the understanding that the process here is actually not a process. The process here is letting go of the letting go of the preoccupation, or letting go of the fixation on a process. See, because everything you've ever done in your life was a process that you had to do something to get from one place to another, didn't you? Yeah, to produce a result, to travel, no matter what it is. So that's the way the brain and the mind operate, that it's a process. You start from one place and you get to another place, right? Yeah, well, this isn't a process. And although the brain and the mind will produce that same reality about this, right? The process of going through that process is a process in which you continually discover more and more clearly that the process isn't necessary. As you go through the process, you discover more and more clearly, where am I going? If I'm there already, where am I going? And why do I continue to think that I'm not there and there is somewhere else when it's here all the time? One of the reasons that I think that isn't seen or recognized, right, is because if I say it's here all the time, right, it doesn't seem to be here for most people, because their attention is so totally consumed and so totally involved, right, with the thinking activity and with the appearance of the world and with the way everything seems to be when you're a separate self, the way everything seems to be when you're a physical body, right? Everybody's so preoccupied with that as reality, right, that the idea that there's something that they're missing doesn't make any sense to those people. What the hell are you talking about that I'm missing? Where? What are you talking about that I'm missing? Now, it's interesting that somebody could ask that question, because it's a good question in a sense, right? The reason it's a good question in a sense is because if you were to give a person that asked that the correct answer, just a straight answer, the correct straight answer would be nothing. Of course, then they would say, well, then get the hell out of my face if you're talking about nothing. Why would I want to talk to somebody about nothing, man? Get a job, right? But that's the truth. We are talking about nothing. We are talking about something that can't be spoken of, aren't we? Sure. Yeah, we are talking about something that is not a thing, right? Yeah. But to talk to somebody whose life is invested in something, to tell them that this is about nothing is like gibberish. It's like you're pulling their leg. What are you talking about? Nothing, right? And yet in these teachings and practices, right, through looking and through doing inquiry, we come to see without any doubt at all, directly, right, that nothing is reality, that nothing is what we are, right? You know, I was reading in Angelo's book when he was talking, I think it was in the Awakening chapter when he was talking about this whole business of identity. Yeah, because the essence of awakening is the shift in identity. It's the shift that makes all the difference, right? To shift from who you think you are and the thinking activity to who you are as awareness of the body breathing, but then as that expands or as that matures, right, awareness is aware of everything, including the thinking, body breathing, emotions, the whole 9 yards. But we're starting with just awareness of the body thinking to keep it simple, right? So we can practice the simple act of recognizing, thinking and moving, the thinking activity and moving awareness over to simple awareness, being aware of the breath. So we're doing this as an activity to begin to increase the probability that because we're touching it, you see, when you move your attention from the thinking activity over to the awareness, you're touching it. The awareness is actually touching itself when you do that. But it's brief because a thought will come and then you're back in thinking, right? So it's very brief, brief touch, right? A glimpse of it right? A foretaste of it is when instead of just a brief touch, right? You have a brief touch and then that touch opens something up because you've touched it enough, right? That something opens up now and you have a period of, you get to visit the truth, right? For a period of time, everything falls away and it's just like, I don't even know what I know and I don't know, but I don't care either, right? That's a pretty nice experience. I don't even know what I know and I don't know and I don't care either. And I can say that because I feel very confident that even though I don't know what I know, I'm fully capable of functioning, right? I don't even know who I am, and I'm happy with that. And everything's perfect just the way it is. Don't ask me to explain it. This is what it's like, right? It's just like that, right? There is nothing in the way anymore. The veil's been lifted. There's nothing in the way anymore that's making the way you see things confusing or complicated, or has you become fixated on some particular aspect of what's going on in the world. So when you have a release like that, right, then it's like, oh wow, I don't know what happened, but I want this back. I don't know what happened, but this felt pretty damn good. I was satisfied maybe for the first time in my life in a way that I never experienced before. Everything seems clear. I'm happy. I'm enjoying myself. And if this is the possibility, and I'm not afraid of anything, and if this is the possibility, I want this more than anything else. So the value of a glimpse and the value of having a foretaste of this is that it's like planting a seed. Yeah, because once you have that the seed is now planted, right? Then the question becomes, are you going to water that seed, right? Are you going to realize that what happened when you had that glimpse, or are you just going to think you were losing your mind and get on medication, right? If you're fortunate and you connect with the teachings and you start to make sense of that a little bit, between that and the suffering you've been experiencing, you're kind of motivated to look into this a little more because it was a hell of a good experience and I don't remember taking any acid, right? So if you get to that place, the question becomes, do you water that seed? What does that mean, right? Do you practice meditation because you realize that through the practice of formal meditation, you're increasing the possibility of having that experience again? And if you have it again and it's a little longer, right, the possibility becomes realer that eventually it can replace the one you're having most of the time, right? And then what the teachings tell us is that is liberation. If it replaces the one that you're having most of the time, what it replaces is that you think who you are as a personality in a physical body is the truth of who you are. If it replaces 100% of the time, while that still may appear to be so, the truth is now known that that is not actually the case, that what you are is awareness itself. There still is a body and appearance. There still is a person and a personality and appearance. There's still in a world and appearance, right? But now your relationship to all that is 100% different than it was because you're not any of that. You're the awareness that's aware of all of that. And then if you take that to the next level, you are all of that and there's nothing but that. That's non-duality. And when you are all of that and there's nothing but that, there is no suffering, there is no evaluation about anything, there is no struggle with it. How can you, just look at it like this. If you are, really see if you can let yourself imagine this. Imagine you are everything. Imagine that you are everything. When I say everything, I mean everything. Everything. The solar system, all the people in the world, the planet, right? Everything that exists. Imagine that you are everything that exists, right? If you are everything that exists, how can you have a problem? How can you suffer? I mean, you really have to penetrate that, right? If you're everything, because remember, if your everything exists, that means you're no longer separate from anything. You're no longer the individual personality that you had it that you were. No, you're everything that exists. Everything that you thought you were in conflict with when you thought you were a person is now you. Everything that you thought was separate from you is now you. Every person that you had conflict with or you judged and evaluated is now you. There's nothing but you. Everything is you, just happening. According to the teachings and the practices, this is an experiential reality. You can actually have the experience of that being the case. Now, that does not mean that you have that experience of being the case and now you're at a new level of spiritual awakening and you can no longer lower yourself to be able to communicate with the rest of the humanity, because you've transcended all this now. And there have been teachers that apparently have gone on that trip, and they just say, I am the Atman, I am the avatar, right? And the only way that you can experience fulfillment and enlightenment is to merge with me, you know. But you see, that can't be a possibility if that person has actually transcended and realized the truth. That can't be true, because they're functioning as if they're separate and they're going to bring you along, right? But if you look at somebody like Angelo, a contemporary teacher, right? If you listen to his speaking, he's not functioning like he's separate from you. No. He's talking, everybody that he talks about, that he answers questions about, right? Something that was very clearly there that I noticed, right, is that he never objects to what they share is happening. He never says, no, that's not it. Never says it, right? He always says, that's perfect. You're right where you need to be. What you're going through is what needs to happen for you. Because the process is unique for all of us. Right? And the only place that people get stuck is they question what's happening. Should I be feeling this right now? If I'm feeling this right now, doesn't that mean that I'm not enlightened? You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So people go through all these processes, right? And as they're going through these processes, they have doubt come up. Why, this isn't, what, is it supposed to be like this? You know, shouldn't I be happy all the time? See, right there is a clue that you're really not awake. If you're asking, shouldn't I be happy all the time? I'm not happy all the time. Shouldn't I be happy all the time? Well, you're obviously not awake, because you're applying the definition of happiness that was understood and used in the unenlightened state. That happiness is a happiness you can't have all the time, because it depends on what you have, depends on what you own, depends on what you get, depends on the experiences you can make happen for yourself. So that's not the happiness of awakening, no. The happiness of awakening is a natural state. And it's not even I'm happy all the time. No, it's happiness is here. This is happiness. This is happiness. And see, that's the thing, you know, if I say to you, you know, who are you? It's an interesting thing. If I say to you, who are you? You can only answer me in the past or the present or the future. You can only answer me in the past. Just think about it. If I ask the typical person, who are you? Any answer they give me will be an answer that that comes from the past or the future. Just think about it. You could say, you know, I'm my wife's husband. Okay, how do you know that? The reference for knowing that comes from the past, right? So the true answer to who are you can't come from the past or the future. And if it can't come from the past and the future, and you answer it from the present tense, you don't know what to say. Do you? Really? Consider it. You don't know what to say. Because the only thing you could say is going to come from the past and the future, right? So you don't know what to say. Well, that's a clue to the truth. If you don't know what to say, it's because there ain't no way to say that. There's no way to say this. I wonder I wonder how many people know what is meant when I or other teachers say this. What this teaching is about is this. See, if you went, once there's an awakening, you know what this is. You know what this is. And this is all there is. There's nothing but this. And you are this. That's the way it is, right? If there's an awakening, that's the way it is. That this becomes well known. This becomes intimate. This becomes obvious. What this is becomes obvious. And yet, it's subtle at the same time. You know, what is this? That was a Zen koan. What is this? I had heard the koan, what is mu, which is one that Angelo was talking about. And I wasn't a koan person. It just wasn't the thing for me. After seeing what is the sound of one hand clapping, I lost interest. But the question, what is mu? His answer was actually a very interesting answer, because he said the way I answered that koan, because he was a Zen student, right? The way I answered that koan was that mu is enlightenment. And when you look at how he arrived at that, it's interesting. He said the only thing that I couldn't think is that. The only thing that you can't think is the truth. The only thing you can't think is reality. Isn't this true? It's non-conceptual, right? You can't think it. The only thing you can't think is the truth. So what is mu? Well, mu is nothing that you have that you can remember having encountered in your life, right? You can't say, "Oh, I know what mu is," right? It was purposely designed to be nothing that you had experienced, right? Well, wouldn't that then be the same as reality? That which is non-conceptual? So what Angelo said is, I knew it was enlightenment because that was the only thing I couldn't think of, right? And mu was something that I couldn't think of. So that must be what mu is, enlightenment. So, you know, koans can be helpful for some people. For other people, they just drive you nuts. You know, everybody's different, right? There is, as Krishnamurti said, the truth is a pathless land, right? So I think it's very important, if you have the interest and the motivation and you're out to have the realization, right? One of the first things I would advise you to do is really, first of all, study what this is. Study what awakening is. Study what waking up is. So you can get clear about it. And he wrote a chapter in the book just on that, right? So you can get clear about it, so you can get a good sense of whether that's occurred for you, right? And if it hasn't occurred for you, then your approach to this work and these teachings should be one in which that's what you're after seeing. That's what you're after recognizing and realizing. And then, of course, the very next thing you want to do is understand that what will expedite that awakening occurring for you is the understanding that it has already happened, that it's already here. Because then you don't have to waste any time trying to make it happen. No, now you can spend your time on getting what's in the way of your recognizing it out of the way.
Would that be noticing what you're not?
Noticing what you're not is one way to do that, you know, because you can't.
But it's much more than just that, right?
Yeah, of course. Of course, noticing what you're not can get you to a place where when you exasperate that process, right, where you can't find anything else to notice that you're not, right, then you might be getting close, right? Yeah, because so noticing what you're not, noticing not just what you're not. For example, noticing that you're not the personality, right? And then more than that, noticing when you think you are that, how it goes. Because you'll fall back into it, right? But if you start paying attention, right, you'll notice that not only am I not the personality, but when I think I am the personality, I'm a troublemaker. When I think I am the personality, I screw up my life. I judge and evaluate other people. I judge and evaluate myself. I get stuck in anxiety. I get stuck in depression, right? I have a cynical attitude about life. I cheat, right? I am obsessed with pleasure and avoid pain. I'm interested in money, and so I'm interested in, because I can't shake the belief that it's the answer. You know, all that's there, right? So it's not just noticing what you're not, it's noticing the implications of being that, what you're not. And then noticing what what the world is not. The world is not what it appears to be. Quantum physicists tell us that it is not a theory that there is no time. It is not a theory that there is no space. So in this process, as Angelo says, as you get it, once the awakening has occurred, and as you get further advanced in this experience, this not really an experience, get further advanced in this happening, you can actually begin to see that your visual field is an illusion. You can actually start to meditate on and contemplate on the visual field and recognize that it is an illusion. The same way you could look at a painting that has the illusion of space. You know, when artists learn how to make things go back to a visual point, so it gives the appearance that there's space, right? That's the same thing your brain's doing right now with this. If you just look at this, if an artist were to draw this, he would put a point back there that would be the focal point, right? All lines would come this way, and they would spread out and get bigger and bigger, and that would give the illusion of space, right? But if you look at your visual field, that's what's happening. That's what's happening all the time. That's how you see space. It's an illusion, right? Same thing with time, you know? So you can actually look at the visual field and begin to see that there is no space, it's actually flat. You can actually practice seeing a flat visual field, right? Because it's not really there the way that you thought it was, right? It's an appearance, right? Same thing with time. You know, time isn't real, right? Time isn't real. I saw a commercial last night. They were selling something to prolong life for people that had cancer.
Yeah.
And they said, time is the most valuable thing you have. Well, in these teachings, we say there is no time. So in the ordinary way of thinking about it, time is the most valuable thing you have. Well, that's true if you think you're a physical body, right? And you're a personality, and you're living in time. Your numbers are coming, your number is going to be up, right? Time is the most valuable thing you have. Why? Because the body that you are is going to die. That's what the commercial was talking about, right? But in these teachings, we say time isn't real, time is an illusion. It's really an illusion. It really doesn't exist. The only thing that actually exists is the present moment, right? That's reality. That's the only truth. That's not a theory, it's not a model, it's the only truth. And if that's the case, and you can train yourself and practice to escape from the illusion of time and experience the present moment, the power of now, right? Then it's not true that the most valuable thing you have is time anymore. No, the most valuable thing you have is the truth, not time. You see the difference? In the ordinary world, it would be time, wouldn't it? Yeah, time and money, and time is money, don't they say? But in the real world, those things aren't true. In the real world, all there is the present moment. And to the extent that you can practice and train yourself and come out of the illusion, come out of the hypnotic state, and be present to the truth of yourself and reality, and live in that ever eternal moment, right? Then the house of cards you were living in falls. The house of cards that existed prior to that falls. What's that mean? The house of cards is the idea of the way a human life goes. Old age, sickness, and death depend on time, don't they? If there's no time and you're experiencing the ever-present moment, the eternal moment, right? Then you transcended time. And if you transcended time, you transcended death. And if you transcended the idea that you're a physical body and a personality, then you transcended everything that goes along with that. So that's freedom. Freedom from what? Freedom from living a life that is nothing other than an illusion, a dream. That's not real. That's very limited. That's not actual. Now, once that's occurred, right, you're still in the world, right? The appearances are still there, right? They don't have to go away. This isn't about going to some kingdom of heaven, some other place. No. The kingdom of heaven is right here where we are. And what makes it the kingdom of heaven is that you're no longer experiencing it in time. You're no longer experiencing it in a limited physical body or as a limited personality. Now you're experiencing the ordinary world as an extraordinary expression of your true nature. The ordinary world becomes an extraordinary expression of your true nature, and you become unendingly fascinated with the details. When you see the world as an expression of you, right, and then you look at the things that you didn't pay much attention to, like the flowers, right? A lot of beautiful flowers out there now, right?
Yeah.
Right? When you wake up, those flowers are like vibrant, more alive. Have you noticed that at all?
I have.
Yeah. When you wake up, the colors are brighter, right? And the things, if you look at trees, for example, you know, I walked out of my house the other day and there was a tree across the street in front of my neighbor's house. And I must have looked at that tree a million times. I walked out of the house, I looked at that tree and was, whoa. I suddenly realized I hadn't looked at that tree. I've never looked at that tree. About 150 feet tall, you know, just an amazing sight to see. And then I looked around, this is all around me. This is all around me, right? And most people don't see any of it. Most people don't see any of it. All they can see is what's in front of me that's blocking me and keeping me from getting where I want to go. That's what I pay attention to, you know. What do I have to do to get more money? That's what I pay attention to, right? What do I have to do to look as good as I can so I can have more sex? That's what I pay attention to. Those trees, they're trees. It's trees. That's what Werner Hart meant when he came up with that lovely phrase that I think was so on point. You know, when he called it tranquilized obviousness. Tranquilized obviousness. You see trees all the time, right? But it's obvious that they're there, and you're tranquilized about it. It's not that exciting. It's tranquilized obviousness. It's a real thing. It's tranquilized obviousness is the way you know the people that are close to you. Like if I ask you, do you know your wife? You're gonna say, yeah, I know my wife. What are you talking about? Of course I know my wife. I live with my wife, right? That's tranquilized obviousness in the sense that what you think you know about your wife, you think is your wife. But that's not your wife. That's a story that you put together, right, about her, that you call her, and you think that's her. That's tranquilized obvious. It's obvious to you that you know your wife, right? You couldn't possibly know your wife because she doesn't know herself. How could you know her? You don't even know you. How could you know you? What do you know that you call you, right? You know these characteristics, right, that you say you have, right? If I ask you about you, you tell me about those characteristics, don't you? Yeah. That's just shit you made up. Right? That's tranquilized obviousness. You think it's obvious that you know who you are, when in fact most people have no goddamn clue who they are. And that's not obvious to them at all, right? So this obviousness, it's obvious that the world is like it is. It's obvious, you know, I mean, you can see the absurdities when you plug it into certain things, you know. It's obvious that the politicians are looking out for our best interests, isn't it? Yeah, give me a break. All right, before I get too carried away.